In May 2015, my mother, struggling to breathe, was rushed from the reservation to Sacred Heart Hospital in Spokane, where she was eventually diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. She was 78 years old and had been suffering with major and minor health problems since her husband, my father, had died 12 years earlier. I knew Parkinson's wasn't fatal, but it can significantly reduce a person's lifespan and lead to severe physical and mental impairment, especially for older people. How quickly would it transform my elderly but mostly self-sufficient mother into an utter dependent? And what about the quality of her last years? How could I make sure she lived and died well? I am not an organized person, but I suddenly felt the need to make serious and complicated plans for my mother's life, for the end of her life. However, it felt more like formal duty than affection. My mother and I had often been estranged. We'd battled and exiled each other. And then, after my father's death, we'd settled into a relationship based on irregular phone calls and occasional visits. My mother and I loved each other. Mostly or partly loved each other, I think. But I'd always felt the need to armor myself against her emotional excesses, and I imagine she felt the same about me. But she needed me now, financially and spiritually. So I booked an immediate flight from Seattle to Spokane to visit her and my siblings in Sacred Heart Hospital. In my taxi to the airport, I researched senior care facilities in Seattle and Spokane. Some of them were quite beautiful and offered extensive programs for residents with Parkinson's. They also seemed to be legal pyramid schemes where elderly patients and their families poured money into end-of-life rent rivers that only flowed up toward the corporate owners and stockholders. But if I were to be grifted, then let the grift be lovely. I did the math on my book sales and expected royalties and knew I could afford a great place for my mother in Spokane if I gave up my outside office and worked only at home. Maybe I could do more lucrative gigs speaking on college campuses. Maybe I could return to script doctoring in Hollywood. I had many financial opportunities, some more probable and profitable than others. I was the lucky Native American son, the fortunate writer, who could take good care of his dying Native American mother. Isn't that an oddly tribalistic and narcissistic realization? Then again, isn't tribalism a form of group narcissism? I can put Mom in a fancy place by the little Spokane River, I said to my sister on the phone from my departure gate in Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. That's what she was worried about today, my sister said. She thinks we're going to put her in an old folks' home and forget about her. Indians don't do that, I said, instantly romanticizing my race. Some Indians do, my sister said, immediately de-romanticizing us. I can also rent a cheap studio apartment near the senior citizen home, I said. It's just a few blocks away and you guys can stay there when you're visiting her. You can take turns seeing her every day. I felt my back spasm and ache from the heavy burden of my Messiah complex. She doesn't want to be in a place where everybody is white, my sister said. She thinks old white people will be racist toward her. I don't think she's wrong, I said. I bet old white people are probably more racist in Spokane. Old people are probably more racist everywhere. Just look at Clint Eastwood. I thought about my late father, a Coeur d'Alene Indian, who'd gradually grown more racist as he aged. But it was a passive form of racism, if there is such a thing, in which he would use a lesser racist epithet to describe a person after a relatively tense encounter. Aside from the time he called a white cop Custer, my father never insulted anybody to their face. He once came out of a 7-Eleven complaining about the towel head who owned the place. So I called my father Buffalo Head for the rest of the day to shame him for his racism. That wasn't quite a progressive move on my part. I wondered if my mother had also grown more racist in her elderly years. I hadn't spent concentrated time with her since my father's death.